All right. It's been a while. My name's John, and you're with me on my morning drive. Today is Wednesday, July 11th, 2012, and we've got just a shade under 4 months till the election. And boy, is there a lot to talk about. Mostly involving Mitt fake-ass Romney. And, you know, the reason, there's so much stuff to cover, because there's just so much stuff going on with this guy. He's a mess. The guy's a complete empty suit, first of all. I don't know if I've done one of these morning drives since the primary season ended. But, Mitt Romney had to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in the Republican primaries to barely get elected. Barely he got the nomination at times. Against people like Michelle Bachmann and Rick Santorum and Rick Perry. These guys are disasters. And of course, Mitt had to just, lay it on thick with the money, because that's the only way he can win, is with gobs and gobs of money. And we're seeing that now because he outraised Obama last month. He's been outraising Obama now, at least super PAC money-wise. I don't know about campaign-wise. Obama campaign still got quite a bit more money than the Romney campaign by a pretty large margin, but the super PAC money is what's piling up. And Citizens United ushered in this era of, anybody that's got money can throw it, as much of it as they want, into a super PAC, and all that super PAC money can go to, blanketing the airwaves with attack ads for Mitt Romney against the president. And it's a sad state of affairs. Because, now, of course, Mitt Romney, he doesn't want to run on his record as governor. He wants to run on his record at Bain Capital as a vulture capitalist. This guy basically, all he was about is maximizing profits, and that was that was the primary focus, and everything else was a distant second, third, fourth, whatever. Seriously, this guy was a shark. And he wants to try to act as if that experience uniquely qualifies him to be president. And honestly, like Joe Biden said, it doesn't qualify him to be president any more than a plumber. Seriously, all this guy did was about maximizing profits. When in the hell, as president, when is your job to maximize profits? First of all, the government is not a business. Secondly, as such, the government doesn't practice maximizing profits. Now, if you want to get into it from the perspective of, balancing the budget, then that's all well and good, but none of his economic policies are going to balance the budget anytime in the near future. Hell, even the coveted Paul Ryan budget, the fiscally responsible, courageous, making the tough choices Paul Ryan budget doesn't balance the budget for 20 years. And the last Republican president to balance the budget was Richard Nixon. And the last one to have a surplus was Eisenhower in the 50s. So these guys are full of shit. When it comes to fiscal responsibility, they have no clue. Or they have a clue, they just don't practice what they preach. When they're out of office, they do nothing but rail on deficits and austerity. When they're in office, they basically act as if deficits don't matter. And the hypocrisy is absolutely stunning. Just as if, and the other thing is the hypocrisy. I have not heard a definitive answer on where the birthers stand on Mitt Romney. However, and this needs to be, I think this is something that at least the progressive media, the progressive talkers like Ed Schultz and Jennifer Granholm and Stephanie Miller and everybody need to latch onto, and that is, if you're going to apply birther logic to President Obama, then you have to apply birther logic to Mitt Romney. And when I say that, what I mean is, I don't know how, in my experience with birthers, most of the real birthers, the hardcore birthers, believe that one of the reasons why, in addition to the birth certificate being fake, that Obama, both of his parents weren't born in the United States. And as such, that means he's not a natural born citizen. So back over to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's dad was born in Mexico. So according to birther logic, the purest birther logic, that means that Mitt Romney is not a natural born citizen, so he's not qualified to be president. So, in addition to disqualifying him as their nominee, birthers should not be voting for Mitt Romney. Now, that doesn't mean they should vote for Obama, obviously, because we know that they have a paranoid delusion when it comes to Obama. But they certainly couldn't vote for Mitt Romney, so they're just not going to be able to vote. They could write in vote for Ron Paul, or they could vote for some other cockamamie candidate like Orly Tates or Donald Trump or some shit, because that's about the extent of it. But birther logic needs to be applied, and if you do that, Mitt Romney's disqualified. Now, the other issue that I wanted to broach is Mitt Romney's running on this record of his. As governor, he was 47th in the U.S. in job creation, and with Bain Capital, he destroyed a lot more jobs than he created. But of course, he ignores the part of the equation where he actually destroyed jobs. He only talks about the instances where he created jobs. He likes to cherry pick. That's a famous Republican thing. Mitt, last 28 months, under the Obama administration, the private sector has created 4.4 million jobs. I don't believe you've created anywhere near that number, Mitt. So, the president's job creation record is far and away. It's better than George Bush's job creation record in his whole 8 years. He didn't create that many jobs. In fact, George Bush's presidency was a net loss. Now you could say, Obama lost all kinds of jobs, blah, blah. Well, the fact of the matter is, you have to give Obama a certain grace period, just as you would give any other president a certain grace period. You would give George W. Bush, anyone. You can't hold a president accountable for at least the first 6 months, if not the first year, in terms of economic policies kicking in. Unless somehow he was able to get substantial economic policies implemented on day one, and then you might be further, closer to that 6-month mark. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. This isn't like, a sports car, it corners on a dime. This is like the Titanic. You got to turn that rudder and hope that thing misses the iceberg. This isn't a precision handling vehicle. It's the U.S. economy. It's a slow moving, lumbering entity. It's not going to respond instantaneously. Especially, it's kind of like a terminal patient. When somebody's having cardiac arrest, you may have to jolt them a few times in order to snap them out of their funk. It's just not something that's gonna happen instantaneously. And that's what I think people, it's probably a product of our society. We're an instant gratification society. So everybody elected Obama thought, a certain portion of people, of course, the people who now have enthusiasm gap or are not as enthusiastic about the president as they once were. Those people, the idiots, the ones that thought that Obama had a magic wand up his ass and he would pull out and wave and everything would be normal again. Those dumb fucks, they've got to come to the realization that this ain't La La Land and Obama has no magic wand. So, as a result, we need to temper this with some realism. The fact that the man has created jobs the last 28 months, that there has been positive job creation month over month in the last 28 months, is almost a miracle. Considering where we were, losing 800,000 jobs a month when he took office, seriously, people. Are you going to sit there and be unrealistic and act as if we can make an economy recover in that short of a period of time? I mean, honestly, it took 8 years to make the mess. It's going to take a hell of a lot longer to clean it up. At least it would seem that way. However, if Obama wasn't being obstructed at every turn by Republicans in the Senate and the House now, imagine what we would be doing. I mean, if, today they're voting, the House Republicans today, and of course, Obamacare or Affordable Care Act now has been implemented for what, say 3 years tops, maybe less than that. In that period of time, these House Republicans have held 31 votes to repeal the Affordable Care Act, something that polls favorably with the American people, something which is helping, something which will actually lower the deficit over time. It's not like it's going to raise the deficit or the debt. Not gonna. Not gonna. Just not gonna. So, in the immortal words of H.W. Bush, or really Dana Carvey, it ain't gonna do it. It's not gonna raise it. I mean, they want to talk all that, it's gonna trillions of dollars and it's a tax increase. And now the Supreme Court has ruled that it's a tax, which is actually a tax penalty, which in turn is construed technically as a tax. It's not a mandate. Of course, they wanted to try to make it about your freedoms are being taken away because the government is taking over health care, which is a bunch of horse shit. Because what is actually happening is all the government is doing is saying, hey, you don't want health insurance, you're healthy, you can afford it. You don't want to have health insurance? Well, you know what, dude? Sorry, you can't do that, because what's going to happen is you're going to get hit by a bus, or you're going to have some, accident or something, which happens regularly. Excuse me. And then you're going to go to the emergency room, and we're going to have to treat you without health insurance, which is going to be about 4 times more than what it would cost for treatment otherwise. And then everyone else has to pay for that. So, you know what? If you want to be stubborn and you want to, fly by the seat of your pants and not consider anyone else in your little selfish world, your little Ayn Randian little bubble, then you're going to get penalized a certain amount of money every year to pitch in your share. And if you don't like it, well, then you need to get health insurance. And if you can't afford health insurance, then the government will subsidize you. And the thing that really blows me away is, they say it's a government takeover. No, a tax penalty is something that, if you abide by the rules that are laid out in the Affordable Care Act, you won't have that tax penalty. So it's a completely avoidable tax. It's not something that's being forced on you, unless you want to be an inconsiderate ass and not be part of the community and not consider everyone else in your little equation. So that's where we are on that. And I don't see what the big deal is. Nobody is mandating anything in terms of forcing you to do something that you don't want to do. You're not forced to. You're just going to incur a penalty if you don't do it. That's the bottom line. And then on top of that, you're funneling all these people to private insurers. It's not like any of this is, Medicare for all. That would be the ideal thing, is Medicare for all. And that's ideally what we should have, is Medicare for all, because it would be so simple. You just take out the sentence that says 65 and over. And instantaneously everyone is, part of Medicare. Bam. Which operates at a 3% overhead, far more efficient than any private insurer. So, how about them apples? Republicans, you don't want them to say that, because then the insurance companies are going to take, they're going to be out of the health insurance business partially. Because you're still going to be, just because everyone had Medicare for all doesn't mean that private insurance isn't still available, because some insurance policies, and the Cadillac policies, for instance, probably have some features or some things that Medicare won't have. Or will cover elective surgeries or things like that. And that's the kind of stuff that the people are still going to want. The rich people are still going to want to, do what they want to do, and they can afford it, so they'll do it. So, I don't understand what the big deal is. This whole government takeover of healthcare nonsense. I mean, seriously, it's just a shortcut to thinking, the whole thing. It really doesn't fly. It's just them using fear, as usual, to try to win an election. And then they want to try to vilify Obama with all these things, but none of it, Mitt Romney goes around telling all these Romney lies. I mean, they are some whoppers this guy's telling. But now, the newest thing, thankfully, that's popped up is they're starting to eyeball Mitt Romney's offshore accounts. Swiss, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, he's got big tax shelter accounts in those accounts, or big tax shelters in those countries. And now he's trying to come back and say, he goes on a talk show in Iowa yesterday, saying that those accounts are managed by a blind trust, or that they're in a blind trust and they're managed by a trustee, and he doesn't know where they're at or what's going on with them. Mr. High-powered businessman, Mr. worth $250 million frickin' dollars, but not counting all that money, whatever other money, not counting his $100 million IRA. You're going to tell me for 1 second that guy doesn't know where every penny of his money is? I don't know any, 100 millionaires of any kind that don't know where every penny of their damn money is. I mean, honestly. Anybody that's got a business background like Mitt Romney supposedly has, that's supposed to, which means he should have a mind like a steel trap, which means he should always want to know where that money is. Because if he didn't really care where his money was, or he didn't really keep track of it all that much, why in the hell would he have to offshore tax shelters? I mean, yeah, you know what? I have no problem with rich people taking advantage of the tax code in terms of, whatever is there, it's, hey, it's our tax code. If people don't like it, then they need to reform the tax code, which is long overdue. And I think we're going to see it pretty soon, because there's, for all the rhetoric from both sides, that does seem to be one common denominator, although I'm sure you're going to have different ideas of reform from both sides. But I mean, I don't have a problem with that so much. What I do have a problem with is a presidential candidate having all this offshore activity and all these offshore accounts to avoid paying taxes. I mean, that may be okay for most rich people, but for somebody that's supposedly running to be the president of the United States, it doesn't reek of patriotism. I'm not saying he's unpatriotic or anti-patriotic or he's anti-U.S. That's not what I'm trying to say. But, I mean, you think about it. Somebody like him is paying 13.9% taxes based on one tax return, which he needs to release like 10 years so we can see what all's going on. For some reason, he is not wanting to let those tax returns out. So either he's hiding something. I mean, there's got to be a reason. If he had nothing to hide, why would he be so worried about releasing the tax returns? The thing that bothers me about it is it's almost like Mitt wants to try to stay as close, as tight-lipped as possible until after the election. If he gets elected, then all that shit's going to come out. But then at that point, it's too late. I mean, then you're going to have buyer's remorse. There's no recall for president. Can you impeach a president on his past, financial transgressions? No, you can't. Now, maybe for tax evasion, if somehow he violated tax law, and the IRS could nail him for tax evasion, but I really don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, Mitt Romney, for all of his, screwiness, being a cult member Mormon, among other things, and just being Mr. Robot and just being completely detached from the regular people, I don't believe he's engaged in illegal activity. I really don't. I think he's probably got a team of top accountants that does all that stuff, and they wouldn't, let him engage in any kind of illegal activity, especially not knowing, he's been running for president now for like 6 years or 7 years, really, in essence. So I really doubt that he's been engaging in illegal activity. Now, it could be. I'm not saying it's impossible. I certainly believe it is possible, but I don't think that's likely. I think more than more than anything what it is he doesn't want to reveal how much taxes he's avoided paying with all these offshore accounts. And that's the thing that's bothersome about it. Another thing is, in Bermuda, he transferred that account into his wife's name recently. So it's like, when you go into bankruptcy, you will get penalized if you've transferred any assets within the last 6 months of going into bankruptcy. Because it shows it shows fraud, willful fraud, it shows an effort on your part to deceive the bankruptcy court, because you're trying to take assets and hide them or get them out of your name so they're not subject to the bankruptcy proceedings. And it's just like this. It's almost like Mitt Romney wants to try to, transfer things into his wife's name so he can say, oh, well, that's not my name. So, but that's the thing, is the American public are stupid. I mean, not all of them. I mean, not everybody. I don't mean that in a blanket statement. There's just a large portion of Fox News watchers that have been brainwashed. And, of course, they're going to replay Mitt Romney spewing lies on the campaign trail nonstop, and then they're going to, throw in their own nonsense from the talking heads about, whatever. And so, you're going to end up with people that are uninformed or misinformed. And if you haven't watched it, you should watch the show The Newsroom on HBO. It's by Aaron Sorkin. Jeff Daniels is in it. It's a wonderful show. It's what I'd love to see that happen in real life. This guy has an opinion, a Republican, kind of, one of the older, reasonable type Republicans. Jeff Daniels is a newscaster. He's a news anchor for a big news network, a fictional one, of course. And he has an epiphany one day and goes on a tirade on a talk show about how America is not the greatest country in the world, and basically telling these people, quit pounding your chest and acting like a bunch of idiots by acting as if we still are and deluding yourself, just, so that you can pander to the crowd. And he goes on a tirade and says this is why we're not number one in the world and we should do something about it. And then he, of course, decides that, of course he gets a lot of blowback from that, beyond belief. And then he decides that he wants to try to return this news network, at least his show, to the days of yore when Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and Edward R. Murrow were just delivering the news, and not all this opinionated, spun news that basically caters to ratings, all this tabloid, 24-hour news cycle, which is just, that's how it's gotten. And that's why we're in the mess we're in, partially, is because you've got such an uninformed or misinformed electorate. He wants to make sure that he's properly informing the masses. And it's a wonderful endeavor, and it gives you hope, really. I mean, I know it's an anachronistic thing, but it would be so wonderful if that actually were true, if somebody would actually do that in the news industry, because, we are to a point now to where we've gotten so far away from actually reporting news, and all we're reporting is what people want to hear, and it's the cult of personality, like that song. It's all about people, just focusing on different personalities, whether they're worthy of the coverage or not. Who gives a shit about Snooki or freaking Britney Spears or Paris Hilton or any of that happy horse shit? Nobody cares about those fucking people. I don't give two squirts of piss about those freaking people. Who cares about them? I care about what's going on in the world that's going to affect me. That's going to affect our country. The fact that we're falling behind China and everything. Or that we're behind, with a shitty healthcare system. Although we like to, all the Republicans like to get up there and stroke their dicks and say how wonderful our healthcare system is. That's bullshit. And then rag on socialized medicine. Well, go to Canada and ask them fucking people how they like their healthcare system, and they'll give you glowing reviews of their healthcare system. So you can take that shit and feed it to somebody else because it's bullshit. So anyway, make sure and get on our website, shredoftruth.com. And you can email me at truthteller@shredoftruth.com, or you can email me at mymorningdrive@shredoftruth.com. If you have any comments or suggestions for the show, what you'd like me to discuss, things of that nature. So I gotta sign off. now. Got to get to work. Thankfully, I have a job. And that's about it. Just keep informed. Make sure you don't let them Romney lies deceive you. And make sure to vote. Make sure you find out what your voter suppression laws are in your state, where you're at, and get the proper ID. And make sure that when you go to vote in November, that you're not going to get disenfranchised. You can even ask for an absentee ballot, too. That's another good way. Or early vote. Because in that way, if there is a problem, you can remedy it. Have a good one, people.